Hello there, and welcome to Cannibal Diva Chronicles, where uplifting the downtrodden is our focus. I'm Cannibal Diva. For those of you who haven't watched any of my videos, I try to talk about stories that touch the heart and stories where I believe people have been downtrodden. And once in a while, I mention the narcissist based on my own experiences and the experiences of others to enlighten women and men who are going through such relationships, to enlighten and strengthen and grant them the knowledge and the wisdom and also strategies that they can take to exit such relationships for their own good and benefit. So today I'd like to talk about the story of Sandile, Mantsoe and Karabo Mokoena. They happen to be two lovebirds who are from South Africa, who happen to be, they looked like they were a very good couple, and they were well matched to each other. Sandile Mantsoe was a 29-year-old man who was into stock marketing and who had a business called $1 trillion, I believe, stockbroking, something to that effect. But $1 trillion was the name of the business. And he had always been a kind of person who appeared to be very successful. He was very confident in himself and he was very well-to-do. He lived in a very well, I guess I would say a very successful environment, which he lived in a high-rise. It appeared to be a condo-like structure, which was quite expensive. And he lived in a highbrow environment, so to speak, and also he drove very expensive and luxurious vehicles, one which was a yellow Mercedes-Benz, amongst about 2 or 3 of them, which he lavishly showed, and he showed off to his friends and those who knew him. He also was someone that was known to be quite in the club scene, and he would show off his money and also talk about his wealth quite a bit. As time progressed, people eventually found out that this was not just confidence, it was arrogance to the core. And Karabo Mokoena was a young, vibrant, beautiful young lady who was in her early 20s, who unfortunately met the acquaintance of Sandile. As time progressed, she happened to be someone that was also in her own right a successful entrepreneur, and she was known to volunteer her services to the shelters in the neighborhood to talk to women who were going through abusive relationships, women who had found themselves at the end of a bad luck stream and who were looking for a better life. She went there on occasion to speak to them about how they could empower themselves and how they could lead better lives, which is similar to what I'm doing. That is one reason why I decided to speak about her, because in her desire to empower the lives of people who were downtrodden, unfortunately for her, she found herself at the wrong end of that stick. As the years would progress, she and Sandile became a couple. There's no mention of how they ran into each other, how they met, but because they were doing something similar in the limelight, she being someone who was looking for the better and the good of others, he who was looking to empower and enrich himself by all means, by speaking to people on an online program and on TV about how they could enrich themselves through stockbroking and through cryptocurrency and the such. He would charge people anywhere from £300 to $400 to attend his seminars. And as time went on, he would talk about how he enriched himself through the stockbroking strategies, which were found out eventually to be all false. He was more into fraudulently stealing and taking the funds of those people who had entrusted him with their money. Because at the end of it all, they found out that he used their money for his enrichment and buy lavish vehicles and live a lavish lifestyle. Unfortunately for Karabo Mokoena, she wasn't aware of all of this until she got herself quite entrenched in this devious and manipulative relationship. She found herself in the clutches of this demon called Sandile. Sandile would take her in and they would date for a while. And she tried to, when she found out about how abusive he was, she tried to leave him on a few occasions. At one point, he had beaten her up, and there are pictures of her with a red eye, black eye, and the cornea of her eyes were which are supposed to be white, had turned red with blood. She had eventually left him and went back to her family home. She lived in a very close-knit family arrangement with her mother and her siblings, and they were quite close, and she had been openly accepted to come back home by her parents and her siblings, where she had eventually gone to a party in the neighborhood of this young man, Sandile, and she had run into him in the nightclub. After running into him in the nightclub, they had renewed and rekindled their relationship for whatever reason. Because, you know, when many people ask the question of why does the woman, especially the woman, in many cases it's the woman that goes back to an abusive relationship, one thing you have to understand is that many times it's like an addiction. It's not that they're doing it of their own free volition, of their own free will. Many of these women are going back to a bad habit because it happens to be something that they're addicted to. So the release of hormones that they feel, these hormones could be anywhere from serotonin, the happiness hormone, or steroids that the body releases naturally when someone is happy, gets to become quite addictive to someone who is in a bad relationship. When the person who is the abuser showers them with love and affection that they are not used to receiving, they lap it up and they enjoy it so much, and they feel that joy within themselves, like an addict, like a cocaine addict, for example, would feel after being deprived of their cocaine for many, many weeks or even a few days, and then receiving it or getting it all of a sudden. That rush that they feel can be described as being similar to someone who is in an addictive, abusive relationship. When it's time for them to leave, they leave willingly when they're able to, but then when they come back to that person, if they're ever exposed to that kind of love and affection again, there's a chance, I'm not saying it at all times, but there's a slim chance for those who are very, very interested in leaving the relationship, there's a slim chance that if that person persists, they might fall back into their old habits of getting back into that bad relationship. And I think in this case, that is what happened to Caribou. She went back to him after he had beaten her up, given her a black eye, after she had landed in the hospital, as a matter of fact, and she had also called the police, and they had investigated, and I believe he was charged for that assault. She had healed and then run into him in this nightclub, and they had rekindled their relationship. She had found herself going back to his house, his apartment. And there's a video which I will show that shows her going into his apartment. And unfortunately, that was the last time anybody ever saw ahead of her. Her mother had made several attempts to locate where she was. She had called Sandile on many occasions to ask about the whereabouts of her daughter, to which point he had responded that he had no idea where she was. And you will notice also in the video that he has a very big trash bin with him, and he was struggling with it in the initial stages after leaving the elevator. As he left the elevator with this heavy load that he was carrying in the trash bin, it was eventually shown that her body was in it. Some of the things I like to focus on in this story is the way he was described by people who told the story, by third parties, by people in her life, by her loved ones, and even the surgeons who were involved in his final arrest and detention. He was described even by the judge as being a devil in disguise. A devil in disguise is the most apt term I've heard anybody describe a narcissist as. They are just devils in disguise. They are on this earth doing the work of the devil. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. For lack of repeating myself, he is a devil in disguise, walking the earth and doing the work of the devil. Sandile Mantsoe was not any different. He was a man who was used to getting his way. He was a man who was used to living a fake life. He was somebody who was more interested in what people outside and who in the public eye did everything in his power to make those who did not know him personally to believe he was a wealthy, affluent, rich man. And he actually called himself a king and a queen maker. He called himself a queen and a king maker because he he had this persona, and he had this fake persona of coming across as someone who could make other people as wealthy as he appeared to be. Now, I'm using the word appeared because he wasn't at all wealthy. Remember, in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that he was using the wealth of others who had paid money into him, into his account, to fraudulently enrich himself. Many of them eventually found out that most of the money they had paid to him was being used for his own life and building himself up as being a wealthy and affluent person. Without all those people, he wouldn't have attained half of the things he had attained. So in other words, he was stealing from innocent people, unbeknownst to them, who thought that they were getting valuable information and learning from him on how to become rich and affluent as he himself appeared to be. Sandile, at the end of it all, had mentioned when he was questioned about the whereabouts of Karabo Mokoena and why he had killed her. Even after killing her, even after disposing of her body in such a gruesome way, by killing her and then burning her body at a dump yard, he had the nerve, the effrontery, and the gall to say that he had tried to enrich her life. He had tried to better her life. He was the one who had introduced her to her NGO and how to try to empower other women. He took credit for the things that this woman had already begun to do even before she met him. He took credit for the things she had already begun to do and things that were already helping other women like her. And he took credit for all her accomplishments at that point by saying that he only tried to empower her life. That is one of the things you will see in people who are narcissists. They take credit for the things that they don't even have any right to take credit for. They don't have any say in it. They didn't do anything to help. But they watch other people progress and they'll be the first to take credit or to try to take credit for any progress that anyone that's close to them has attained. In this case, the most unfortunate and the most annoying part of it is that he was trying to take credit for someone who he had killed. A young, vibrant, promising, beautiful woman, well loved by many. After killing her, he still had the nerve to talk about her in that way. To talk about her as if she had no desires of her own. She had no purpose in life than to just be there at his whim, to learn everything from him and eventually become something because of him. So after taking credit like this, taking credit about everything that she had accomplished, in other words, he was blaming her for already being in a situation that was not of his own doing before she met him. He said, unfortunately, and I quote, "Before I met her, she was already in a bad situation." Remember I mentioned in the beginning that she was somebody who had volunteered her help and her services to shelters. So I'm not quite sure what he meant by saying that. She was someone that was already doing well enough without him. And her life was already 1,000% better without him than after she met him. And that is what you find again with some narcissists. Your life deteriorates. Your life deteriorates so much after you meet a narcissist. You have to ask yourself a question. How was that my life before? How happy was I before I met this person? How joyful, how fulfilled was I without this person in my life? And that is how you'll know if a narcissist is the person you are having a relationship with, or if the person you're having a relationship with is a narcissist. In this case, he ticks all the boxes of being a narcissist. As you hear this young fella in the coffee house talk about him, he also mentions that and says that he's a narcissist, to which I agree completely, 100%. Sandile Mantsoe was the epitome of the evil genius of a narcissist. And as the judge would sentence him to 32 years in jail, he even looked like it didn't bother him. They have this masks that they wear all the time. For you to know how the masks look, I'll post a short video of how his face was after he was sentenced or just before he was sentenced. His face looks like a complete mask, as if he doesn't care about what's happening to him, as if he even feels slighted and he feels like the victim in this situation, as if he's being targeted for something that he had nothing to do with. you find it hard to even look at him and remember that he was the one that committed this gruesome crime against an innocent victim. He is the one that appears to be the victim in this situation. And that is the case for all narcissists that I've heard about. Most of them, anyways, always want to come across as a victim. They have a victim mentality and complex about them. They don't want to be looked at as someone that's committed a crime. They will beat a dying horse. They will kill somebody and still come out and speak about that person in a very negative way, just to shield themselves from any kind of judgment against them about the way they treated that person. And that's no different in this case. I hope that Sandile spends the 32 years and not even one day short of that 32 years in jail, because he deserves everything he did to this poor lady. She was trying her best to keep her head afloat and above water. And you know, sometimes you wonder why people eventually get entangled. I don't think she was after his wealth, because as far as I can say, she was also well-to-do to some extent in her own right. She wasn't wealthy or rich by all means, but she was getting by quite adequately before she ran into this person. And for him to extinguish her light and to completely destroy her to the point of even killing her and disposing of her body in such a gruesome manner by burning her. When he was asked what happened, he said he had set her ablaze after killing her. He had taken her to a dump yard and poured gasoline over her, a dead body, and set her ablaze. This is the heart of the devil himself. And that is why I still believe, and I truly applaud the judge calling him a devil in disguise. Thank you so much for tuning to Cannibal Diva. And I hope that you're all showing yourselves love out there. Take care and God bless.
I asked Sandile about the whereabouts of Karab, and he said no. He last saw her on the 27th, around 4 p.m. He was calm. Hey, Sandile's character, I can't tell. Because when you look at him and the way he speaks, you can say, no, this person is quite honest, you see.
I asked him what was inside the dustbin that it was looking heavy. Is where he confessed to me that, no, Captain, I killed my girlfriend. How? She said no. He said, I take him to the field where I burned her body. How did you burn her? He said it was acid, petrol, tire that I used to burn